Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, an inside look at the making of CBN Films' latest release, Oracles of God, the New Testament. A look at the tenacious Israeli team that persevered to make this documentary about the origins of the New Testament. We'll hear from writer-director Aaron Zimmerman about the film and how viewers in the U.S. can see it in their local theaters on November 2nd, 3rd, and 5th. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this special edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Today we're taking a look at CBN Films' new documentary, Oracles of God, the New Testament. It addresses the question people have asked for 2,000 years. Can the New Testament be trusted? Does it tell the truth about Jesus' life and the early church? We'll speak with the film's writer and director, Aaron Zimmerman, throughout the program and take a look at some clips. But first, here's the latest from our news desk.
Tens of thousands of Ultra-Orthodox Jewish men, known as Haredim, took to the streets, prayed, and blocked the entrance to Jerusalem for hours Thursday. They were protesting a proposed law to draft religious students into the army and the government's arrest of Haredi draft dodgers. One young man fell to his death after climbing to the top of a crane, and hundreds clashed with police.
It is not worth it to fight with each other. We are all for the Torah. We are all the children of the Creator of the world in this country, and we all need to be one people. We are all a family.
Military service in Israel is mandatory, except for the Ultra-Orthodox, who are exempt. That causes great political and social friction here in Israel, especially now after 2 years of war.
And I'm here today on behalf of all the reservists, all the soldiers, all the people who were injured in this war, all the families who lost their beloveds, to tell my brothers, the Haredim, join us. There is no contradiction between serving in the army and serving the Torah and studying Torah.
Later on Thursday, Hamas returned 2 more bodies of murdered hostages. Amiram Cooper, 84, one of the founders of Kibbutz Nir Oz, was kidnapped and murdered in captivity. Sachar Baruch, 25, from Kibbutz Be'eri, was taken from his mother's home when terrorists raided it. They murdered him later during an IDF rescue attempt. The bodies of 2 Americans are among the 11 remaining in Gaza. Those bodies should have been returned in the first part of the recent deal 18 days ago.
The combination of the determination of the political leadership and the resolute actions of our wonderful soldiers and commanders has led to the crushing of the Iranian Axis to bring back all our living captives.
Meanwhile, tensions are rising between Israel and Lebanon, with reports that the ceasefire is in danger of collapsing. Israel has been carrying out frequent targeted strikes against Hezbollah terrorists as they try to rearm and rebuild their infrastructure in violation of the understandings between Israel and Lebanon. According to the agreement, Lebanon is required to disarm the Iranian proxy Hezbollah, which has been slow going. However, the Lebanese army has not confronted the Israeli military. But in a sign of a shift, Lebanese President Joseph Aoun reportedly instructed the army to confront any Israeli incursion into southern Lebanon after a municipal worker was killed there. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar met with the UN Special Coordinator for Lebanon, Janine Hennis. He wrote on X, Hezbollah, with Iran's support, continues to intensify its efforts to rebuild and rearm. This is dangerous for Israel's security, just as it is for Lebanon's future. Israel cannot bury its head in the sand in the face of this trend. Meanwhile, Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, accused the UN interim force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, of breaching its mission when it shot down an Israeli drone. UNIFIL was created in 1978 to oversee the disarmament of Hezbollah and prevent attacks against Israel. But Danon told JNS News it has not done that. He said that the UN has violated its mandate and UNIFIL's time is up. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
CBN Films' new documentary, Oracles of God, the New Testament, sets out to present evidence of what's been called the greatest story ever told. The production began 2 years ago against the backdrop of war, with actors leaving for the battlefront and missiles interrupting filming in the Galilee. Here's an inside look at how the team completed the film, despite the challenges, and found joy in the making of it. Through sirens and schedule changes, Scripture turned into script.
It was an enormous privilege to have an entirely Jewish cast and crew. And at one point they looked at each other and they said, why don't we ever hear these stories in school? These are amazing.
I feel like telling more and more spiritual stories like this story, and to give more light in these very dark times, it's a huge privilege.
Before you're crucified. Okay. And you know that, but they don't.
There was this moment of, really, in the end, we're acting, but of lashings and blood and the crown, and suddenly I thought about the crucifixion, I thought about Jesus. I thought about the crucifixion itself, and that moment when Jesus is crucified is simply something that is etched. I think there's no person in the world for whom that image isn't etched in their mind.
You know, I've been working with the same crew for about 8 years, I would say, and there was such joy and unity on this set. We enjoyed every second.
7th of October. Almost all of us lost the joy. I personally lost my joy. I lost it completely. And I don't know why this production gave me back the joy.
We got a close-up of him putting his hand, and we'll put the fake nail.
I'm going to do wounds and cuts and beating, and suddenly in this production, it became art again.
Even though war caused issues, it couldn't stop God's timing. Spiritual hunger has led to resurgence in the Bible, especially among the young. Aaron's been watching the numbers. You were citing actually some statistics from back in 2024 where Bible reading is actually exploding. Tell us why this film kind of hits this the growing hunger for knowing about what's in the Bible.
Both in the US and the UK, millennials and Gen Z are really leading the way in Bible reading and going back to church. But even last year, 2024, there was a 22% increase in Bible sales over 2023, which is really interesting because for the rest of books, it was only a 1% increase.
Oracles satisfies the hunger from the place where it all began.
That CBN decided to film the film in Israel, in Jerusalem, in the Sea of Galilee, in the authentic locations, Mount of the Beatitude, deserts. It gives the film a special look, and it's very authentic. It's very encouraging that especially in very, very difficult times, we have an American network that dares to come to Israel and to film and trust us that in any time, come rain or shine, we will deliver and make this film. So as an Israeli, that's for me very important.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for living righteously, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
Aaron Zimmerman, thanks for joining us. You're the writer and director of Oracles of God, the New Testament. This is a project that started way back in 2017. Tell us how it made it all the way here to 2025.
Hi, Chris. It's good to be with you. I don't think I've ever had a project drag on this long, but we've just been hit by a multitude of world events. The first one being the pandemic, when everyone shut down, so we couldn't go anywhere. Israel wasn't accepting visitors and we couldn't fly. And then we did get there 2021. We shot the first film about the Old Testament. And then in 2023, we were all set to go with the New Testament, stayed the whole summer, did all the pre-production, and we were set to start filming on October 9th of 2023. As we all know now, 2 days before that came October 7th, and it just horrific attack by Hamas on Israel. So we had to shelve the project again. We came back last year in 2024 to do it, and wouldn't you know, Hezbollah felt like coming down and saying hello when we were filming in the Galilee. So it's been some fun times with this project.
What were the challenges of actually filming during a war? I can imagine there's a lot of complications, including some of your cast members actually being part of the IDF.
The great majority of our cast, being a biblical film, was young males. So a great majority of them immediately went to the reserves. We had some people going to the reserves in between our shoots. We had to schedule their scenes in between their service time. And for a movie that has a lot of Jesus and the apostles, of course we wanted to shoot in the Sea of Galilee. And of course the week we wanted to shoot is when Hamas started throwing every kind of missile at the Sea of Galilee. At 5 a.m. on our first day of filming, we were set to go out to Mount Arbel and shoot this beautiful scene with Jesus doing, the Sermon on the Mount and the Lord's Prayer with his apostles. So 4 a.m. And it was unusual because, as you know, because you live there, you hear the sirens first and then you hear sort of the bombs falling or whatever, or the Iron Dome going off. That morning was different. We heard the bombing first. I was woken up anyway by this just tremendous bombing, and then the sirens sort of kicked in. So it was kind of a fun morning run for us all to the shelter. And then we just got up and thought, okay, it's done. Let's go out. The sun's shining. It's a beautiful day. We had the most beautiful sky ever. And so we went out to Mount Arbel and filmed. The next day after we filmed, Mount Arbel was closed. We went to the Sea of Galilee and filmed. The next day after that, the Sea of Galilee was closed. We tried to go to Nazareth. And then on the way to Nazareth, somebody called us and said, no, shrapnel's falling in Nazareth. You can't go there. So we had to reroute our plans a little bit. And I just gave credit to God and our producers for being able to do that so deftly. We didn't miss a location. We didn't miss a shoot. We got it all done.
Wow, remarkable. And we want to talk about that. And we also want to talk about, how this film is coming out at a critical time when there's really a growing spiritual awareness and people looking more to the Bible. So we'll talk about that in our next segment.
I said 4. Next. I said next.
Matthew, son of Alphaeus.
Who are you?
Follow me. Come.
Welcome back, Aaron Zimmerman. There seems to be a growing awareness, and you were citing actually some statistics from back in 2024 where Bible reading is actually exploding. Tell us why this film kind of hits this the growing hunger for knowing about what's in the Bible.
Sometimes we really question God's timing and things. As I said earlier, I started this project in 2017. I thought we'd be done by 2019. But God has his plan, and he knew that right now there was going to be this resurgence of hunger in the Bible, especially with young people. That's the really shocking thing. Both in the U.S. and the U.K., millennials and Gen Z are really leading the way in Bible reading and going back to church. But even last year, 2024, there was a 22% increase in Bible sales over 2023, which is really interesting because for the rest of books, it was only a 1% increase. People in the publishing industry are wringing their hands. Oh my goodness, publishing is dead, but yet the Bible's increasing 22%. This year, 2025, we already have 1 million more Bible sales at this time than we did last year at this time. So it's continuing, and we see it. And I think it really started with the pandemic. I think the pandemic caused a lot of anxiety and fear in young people and, having to not go to school. They just weren't used to anything anything like that. And there's a lot of anxiety and there's a lot of looking for hope. And, it just doesn't seem like the whole world's on fire. And you're really in the center of it right now. But there's so much violence in America. There's so much war everywhere else, Russia, the Middle East, everywhere. And I think people are really looking for some hope and looking for Jesus and looking for what can calm me down in this time. And they're going to the Bible. And I think it was natural because honestly, young people have been kept from the Bible for so long by their schools, by society. It's going to circle back around. They'll eventually rebel and things are so attractive when they're forbidden. If you forbid the Bible, they're going to get there.
Like that. That's perfect. Okay.
So as the writer-director, in what way did you want to sort of literally bring the Bible to life?
We have this tremendous gift with the New Testament that we didn't have in our Old Testament movie. And this gift is called the Church Fathers, this generation of Christians that was one or maybe two generations removed from the apostles. Some of them were even actually direct students of the apostles. So they heard all of these stories firsthand. So I went back to the source. I went to these church fathers and heard what they said about how they were written. And I learned some really funny things, including this was a funny thing to me, but you'll have to watch the movie to see it. Why John wrote his gospel. You have to remember, John's gospel was written around AD 90, about 30 years after the rest of the apostles. So he read the first three gospels and decided he had to write his own. So we explain why. And for me, it was kind of funny.
And we're going to talk more about the making of Oracles of God, the New Testament, when we come back.
Israelis are strong, but years of a multi-front war would take a toll on any population. Our partners make it possible for CBN Israel to be on the ground every day, helping those in need with meals, housing, bomb shelters, medical emergencies, trauma therapy, and more.
In the aftermath of October 7th, the families of hostages found themselves in unimaginable darkness. But a new kind of light emerged, a community of friends, neighbors, and strangers who dropped everything to offer support. Their selfless commitment, often at the expense of their own lives and jobs, sparked the creation of a new organization, Kamim. To help these heroes, CBN Israel supported a series of retreats designed to give them the tools they need to heal.
I know that CBN, if you call on them, they're there. If you explain it to them and they understand what it's about, and if you can show them the transparency they need to see, they're your partners.
If you want to be a part of this, go to cbnisrael.org. Thanks.
Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?
Lord, you know everything. You know I love you.
When you were young, you were able to do as you liked. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and others will take you where you don't want to go. But just follow me.
What about him, Lord?
If I want him to remain alive until I return, what's that to you? Peter, follow me.
Aaron, tell us what you want viewers to take away when they go and see the movie.
Well, we see a lot of stories about Jesus in a lot of movies and television programs, and they're amazing. And I think they've really resurrected an interest in Jesus and in the apostles and what his life was like on earth. So we're doing something that's a very complimentary story. How did we get those stories, and were they written down correctly? There's been a move for a couple hundred years now to sort of discredit the Bible and say, well, it wasn't written at the time. It was written a few hundred years later, and it couldn't have been written by eyewitnesses, and all that nonsense. So we go back to the church fathers again, these people who learned at the feet of some of the apostles, heard all the stories, and we're going to show you how those stories were written down. What sources? Think about it. Would you remember something so clearly that you'd seen 20 or 30 years ago. When these apostles were writing, they were writing about 20, 30 years after the time of Jesus. What were their sources? There were sources that are not actually in the Bible. So we look at that. We look at how and when they wrote things down. We look at why they wrote things down. So I feel like this is everything that Jesus wanted us to know when he left. You know, we didn't have the privilege of walking with him in the Galilee. We didn't have the privilege of being in the Old Testament and hearing the audible voice of God booming down at us. What we have is the Holy Spirit, and we have this Bible, this final love letter. So to me, it's the most important piece of writing that can be in our lives. Why do we not want to know how it was written and by whom and where? I want to know everything about this book that was Jesus' final gift to us. So that's what I want people to walk away with, just how the whole process came about and how the Holy Spirit really guided this process to make sure that the words that were written down 2,000 years ago are the words we have today in our Bible, in our iPad, however we read it.
Well, what a great takeaway. A final question, Erin, how can people see the movie?
Okay, well, we are going to air in theaters nationwide in America for 3 nights, November 2nd, 3rd, and 5th. And to get tickets and to find out which theater near you is airing it, you can go on fathomentertainment.com.
Great. We look forward to it, Erin. Thanks for joining us. If you want to catch Oracles of God, the New Testament, it will be in area theaters in the U.S. nationwide for 3 nights, November 2nd, 3rd, and 5th. And to find out which theater near you is airing it and to get tickets, go to fathomentertainment.com. Well, that's all for this special edition of Jerusalem Dateline about Oracles of God, the New Testament. Thanks for joining us. Remember to follow us on social media, and you can also access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And as always, keep praying for Israel and for the peace of Jerusalem. I'm Chris Mitchell. For all of us here at the Jerusalem Bureau, we'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.